All right. It's a great Sunday afternoon, and it's really a pleasure to be here today as we get prepared for this amazing session that we have been anticipating in this very festive cultural season. And so, without any further delay, we want to be able to jump into this topic. And as we share this presentation and have this discussion, it is my desire that we spark a conversation that will bring awareness, enlightenment. It will bring advice, and wisdom for all those who are seeking a better path in parenting, in family life, in relationships, in just holistic development, and so let's get into this topic. All right, we have Miss Taylor joining us today. All right, as we join this topic, Miss Taylor, you have any want to say hi to the audience?
Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here on this wonderful Sunday. Um, I really hope you guys enjoy the topic today. It's going to be really exciting and interesting discussion. So, welcome.
All right, excellent. Excellent. Miss Taylor, as we jump into the topic, I'm just going to pull up my slide as we try to get things started. We had a little slight technical difficulties, but we thank God that things will be sorted out. All right. And so without any further delay, I want to be able to go into, I would say, our topic for today. All right. And our goal really is just to bring a level of consciousness. As I said, the first level to change is consciousness. Being aware, self-awareness that there is a situation or there is something that is out of the norm that needs to be addressed or that has to be confronted. And it's the first step to all transformation, right? Self-awareness. And it's important that we come to a place where we can say to ourselves, listen, we cannot continue living as though certain things are not happening in the world around us. And furthermore, we are not being affected, whether negatively or positively, by those circumstances. So our topic today is Carnival. Isn't that an interesting topic, Miss?
It is. It is.
I think we have come to a place where we really have to, from a very objective perspective, be able to look at culture in its objectivity, and to be able to identify what are the ways in which culture has its pros and it has its cons. And we must be able to identify where are we losing that grip as it relates to what really defines us as a people. What really defines us, what really makes us who we are. Because as you know, culture is a major part of our identity. And if we identify ourselves using certain traditions or practices or symbols, or lingo which is a major part, lingo and music and dress wear and all these things, it makes up a major part of our national culture. Miss, you teach social studies. How does that topic normally goes in the academic sense of teaching about culture, students about culture? What are some of the basic things that are covered when we are teaching students in social studies about culture? I know the first thing we teach them at Standard 1 is, the national emblems. You want to start the conversation from there?
Yes. Now culture for social studies is basically teaching you your country's identities, things that they identify with or celebrate, you know. Culture, as everyone knows, a set of customs and beliefs, right? That has been, or traditions that has been passed down from one generation to the next. Culture also is also part of our identity as a people, right? For a nation. However, in every nation, there will always have people who has different views or opinions about what is the particular norm that is going on at that time, right? So our topic today is very interesting, culture, and carnival culture, the carnival culture, which is a national festival in Trinidad, which means that it involves everyone, right? May not totally or holistically involve everyone because everyone has a choice. But carnival, yeah, this whole topic of carnival, if you go to the origins of it and how it has started, it's really a play on freedom from our African ancestors, those who were enslaved, right, by the Europeans. Carnival is not a now thing. It has expanded, right, throughout the years, hundreds of years, especially in Trinidad. But Carnival was really an European something. They would do like a ball, have it like a gala event. And the slaves back then, those who were the house slaves, have to serve their masters in these balls and so on. They found it interesting and they wanted to participate. However, they couldn't, right? So they decided to form their own custom or their own tradition and their own style spin-off to what they saw the European planter class were doing. And that's how Carnival today is really a part of that. The slaves really wanted a sense of belonging to, a sense of identity. And over the years, it has developed into something that I really hoped we could have gone back to the past and see the various different styles and creativity of our ancestors compared to what we know it today to be, just skin all over and the vulgarness. But it was really a time for the slaves to really have a time of freedom, right? And give them a sense of relief from all that toil and discrimination that they experience. So carnival that we experience today, or culture of carnival that we experience today, is nothing what it was compared to in the past. So, yes, sir.
But definitely you would have done an excellent job in giving some context of what really happened as it relates to emancipation and slavery and the days when, there was the slave trade really shifted not just economics, which was really the focus and the drive of our colonizers, as certain people would say, right? But really and truly, of course, their goal was profit. How can they extract the resources from a naive, a young nation, within the Caribbean island states? How can they extract the coffee and the oil and the sugar cane, and all the mineral wealth, and also the different levels of wealth that took place and was produced in the very fertile nations of the Caribbean. However, there were also not just economic impacts, but cultural impacts that derive. Because obviously, when you have, just last week, we were doing also just teaching social studies and sharing with the kids. There were over 10 or even 15 countries that were literally not just fighting for ownership of Trinidad and Tobago, but also slaves and workers, indentured laborers, that have came here from several different nations, from the Netherlands to Ireland, to Spain. We know the normal ones, or the main ones, Britain and France and Spain, and these more prominent world powers at the point in time. But there were other nations that came here, plantation owners, and they really came to see what prospects of prosperity they could gain from this burgeoning and developing nation. However, they brought with them not just their economic exploits, but they also brought their cultural blends. That's why Trinidad is known as a melting pot, a melting pot. And so Trinidad, got the name La Trinidad, which is Spanish for Trinity, right? I told my students a week ago or so, I told them, listen, it was the Spaniards that found this country, so have respect for the Spanish. Have respect for the Latinos, because it was a Spaniard, right, Christopher Columbus, that we would say rediscovered. The Amerindians were here first. That's why we call them the first peoples. Just going back a bit, we are just covering these these issues for context for what we're about to discuss, because as Miss Taylor was saying, basically, the slaves after emancipation, they would have seen the aristocrats and the high class practice these masquerades, when these masks over their faces for their gala balls and events. And because of course they were slaves, they were not allowed that privilege. They just had to watch and observe. But when emancipation came and they had that freedom of expression, a privilege they didn't have before, they took that opportunity to really express, what pains and pressures as a people they were going through. All right. And so really and truly, the Carnival masquerading, as they call, really started by the slaves, of course, who will have adopted a lot of their local traditional practices, like the Mokojombi. That was not from France. As we know, the masquerading and so on really came from the French culture, all right, not really the British, all right. But the slaves included their African, or should I say Afrocentric and Indocentric cultural practices, like the Mokojumbis, all right, and the Jambolasi, and the Red Devil, and a lot of these other influences came from both African and East Indian influences into. So in other words, Carnival is like a hybrid. It's a hybrid of cultures, from the French to the British to the Africans, to the Indians. And today what we are seeing is a modernized I would say, masquerade, evolution of Carnival, right? And so we are looking at, from a academic perspective, we teach our children, you must know your emblems. Who's your prime ministers, presidents, national bird, coat of arms, national flag, and the list goes on, national pledge, and all these things. But the wider influence that really governs us, our identity, comes into play when we now whet our children's appetite and they find out the steel band is our national instrument. And they hear about, during this time, about 2 weeks ago, we had the school's steel band competition, which in all honesty and disclosure, I also participated in, right? I played for my school on 2 occasions, right? But when a child wants to take it to the next level, when do we draw the line as parents? And I think that now becomes the concern we are having. As a concerned, members of society, where do we draw the line? Where do we really guide children in age-appropriate disclosure of this culture, which has become, as Ms. said, very, very, I will say, hypersexualized. And I give an example. So I have a client drop into an event, as a courtesy, and long and short, she's showing me this is a visitor from the US, and they're saying, well, they finally got their costume, their Monday wear and their Tuesday wear. And when she finally saw the picture of it, in terms of the actual, but of course, when they show you the catalog, it's they show you with all the feathers and all the, the trimmings. But when she actually finally got it, she was like, "But this is practically I'm naked," And she asked her colleague who she traveled with. He said, "What do you think about this? Do you think this is appropriate for me to be paraded in the street in?" And this is an American tourist that came to witness this for the first time. And this is, in a nutshell, our concern, not just as educators and teachers, but I think there are other areas of society that have these same concerns as well. What has Carnival reduced itself to? All right. Is there a new low that Carnival has now descended to? Right? So we want to jump into our topic today. Carnival. Culture or cult? Culture, cult. I'm going to start this with an opening statement where we are looking at the main root word for culture. All right. And the thought came on me the other day that some nouns for example, government, comes from the root word govern, you know. So government is the noun, govern is the verb. And out of that derives a system or structure that implements governance, right? But when we look at the word culture, all right, we mentioned about Carnival culture, how some of its origins, how it started, you know, and really and truly what Carnival expresses and what it displays really social, political, you know, reflections of what's happening in society from our calypso, our songs, our extempo competitions, you know, it all reflects, you know, topics and issues in current affairs, you know, and so there's nothing wrong from that perspective, isn't it? Isn't that correct, Miss? Let's start this conversation.
No, it isn't wrong in that context, no.
That's correct. However, the concern, I guess, would be where do we draw the line?
Exactly.
Without that concern.
Exactly. But in my opinion, it is very important for a child growing up to know their culture in context, meaning their national culture. Why? For instance, if someone from another country comes and asks them, what about your country? What about Trinidad and Tobago makes it different from America? Now, you're supposed to know automatically the various things that is just unique to Trinidad and Tobago alone.
Mm-hmm.
So our food is one, right? Our places, historical places, natural, our natural environment aspects. So like the pitch lake that is unique to Trinidad, right? Our scarlet ibis, the birds that is only natural to here. So children has to understand or know, has to have a level of understanding and knowledge about their country. They may not have to understand or know all the bad laundry of the country, but they need to know the good aspects of it as well. So again, how much are we supposed to expose our children to?
Mm.
That's the question.
That is correct. And that introduces really our main question that we really want to answer today, which is how much do we expose our children to? How much of culture do we expose our children to? Right? Now, allow me to right. So allow me to just get into this thing very quickly. Right? We are looking at now when I looked at the root word of culture, I saw cult, right? And I'm like, wow, but in any normal setting, that word cult, it will raise red flags. Most times it is just the religious, you know, groups that are fanatical, you know, as a matter of fact, the definition says very clearly, a system of religious like worship or ritual, you know, to
Devoted attachment, you know,
mm-hmm,
extravagant admiration.
right? That is the very clear definition, right? Persons or practice or belief, a group of followers, right?
Right.
However, sometimes when we look at society and culture, that level of fanatical, extravagant admiration, somehow when we blanket the word culture when we blanket the word cult with the suffix culture, under the blanket of that suffix culture, somehow it softens the impact of what the word really means. I don't know what's your thoughts about that, Miss.
No, correct. You are correct. It softens it so it deters you from the true meaning of what it really is. And the English language is so beautiful, because the root word of culture is cult. But as Sir, you just mentioned, we would never believe that some of our practices that we do, I mean, and we as a society, whether here in the Caribbean or, anywhere else, we may not see it as a cult. It's just who we are, our identity as a nation.
And that's the thing. It is widely accepted, which brings us to the definition of culture now. And let me see if I can get that quickly. So culture now, when you look at the word actually says now, it's an the word year, of course, as you would have read before, it's a suffix and it adds it, for example, closure, exposure, it creates or forms an abstract noun. But the actual suffix means an action, state, or result. So the definition that we was able to get was, therefore, culture is a state or system of socially acceptable behavior, actions, beliefs, values, customs, and traditions of a particular people or society, right? This is what it becomes an acceptable standard. And by all intents and purposes, that seems normal, doesn't it?
Sure, it seems normal, but how much is normal?
I think that's the question. Because if we look, let's just look very quickly at this graphic we was able to find here. It says cults versus cultures. A group connected rather by appreciation for the same thing, person, or ideal. That reminds me of the statement which says, great minds think alike. So because we have the
Yeah.
same.
I'm not hearing you. I think there's a technical difficulty.
You can hear me now, Miss?
Yes, I can.
All right, awesome. Right. I was saying that the concern becomes when does something turn from cult to cultish?
Hmm.
That becomes now the concern.
Yes.
That becomes the concern. Because, okay, so I'm looking at this thing, right? Culture allows you to think how you choose and contribute to that group. Right? It kind of gives you an impression that culture is something you have a level of autonomy. You can choose to participate or not.
Yeah.
Whereas in a cult, it says you must think and behave in a certain way to
To belong.
belong.
Mm-hmm.
To belong. Now, to me, the very subtle deception about this is that though it is true, culture seems participative and autonomous. You have a level of choice, freedom of choice. And cult is like, it's saying that that choice kind of takes away from you because, of course, in most cults, you have a charismatic leader or
Mm-hmm.
you have a system that dictates how people should think and move and behave and dress. And that happens. However, when culture becomes systemized or socialized as an accepted standard, an identity of a people, then how much autonomy do you really have if you have to operate that way, if you have to belong in that society? Where's your free choice then? It's just some thoughts I'm thinking.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's very good or deep reflection questions. Why? Because now if you choose, let's just say you choose not to follow the norm or the culture, right? Even though you are allowed to think, you are allowed. But if you are the minority compared to majority of who is, who's actually following the culture and the norm, and you choose to not follow it. Now, remember, you have a choice, right? However, the majority makes the minority feel like they are the cult and that you are wrong for choosing not to participate. So they make you the minority, the cult, and because the majority thinks that they are right, they make you feel outcast because you made a decision not to participate. So hence the word culture, right? Because they want you to think a certain way, which is a cult. And if you choose not to, then you are the outcast. Something is wrong with you. You can't belong or you don't belong.
Well, Miss, I must say that is some powerful, powerful insights. And my concern is when you live in a society all your life, you grew up bred as a Trinidadian or a member of the Caribbean diaspora, because sorry, not Caribbean, sorry, Carnival and culture has become part and parcel of our national ethos, our identity as a people, as a Caribbean people. We export a lot of our culture to different countries, especially the Jamaicans, globally respected, for not just their lingo and their accent, their beloved accent, but of course their sports. I mean, Usain Bolt, proud Jamaican, Bob Marley,
They are now Hollywood is creating movies with Bob Marley. I'm waiting for a day where Hollywood does a movie for Brian Lara, and people like Lord Kitchener, you know. But just saying, when you export an ideology, a system that is accepted as your national identity, then how much choice and will do you have to kick back? And as you said, if you do kick back, you become, which is the minority, you become the odd one out, And our young people, unfortunately, today in school system, one of the things I heard Father Clive, Father Clive? Some years ago, I was listening to a contribution, a sermon by one of the former archbishops of the Catholic Church, and he was saying one of the things that he's disheartened about with the education system today is that they don't teach children the ability or the subject, a subject called philosophy, the power of thinking, the ability to think on your own and to reason. So I'm looking at this topic, right? Elements of culture. And basically it's saying that the 5 elements of culture, you have symbols, languages, norms, values, rituals. Right? Now, rituals is a if you look deeper into this, miss, what is your idea of a ritual?
A ritual is something that is seen as sacred. So it's like the action part of the culture, right? Where you actually you do the action. Where you participate, right? And certain special ceremonies or activities relating to that value and norm.
So that's correct. We have Rituals Coffee, and they will have gotten that concept of Rituals Coffee because for coffee, for example, is a known ritual, globally. Some people cannot survive the day without having a cup of coffee. It's something that is done ritualistically every single day. It's become part of your identity, The thing with these patterns of behavior, which we call habits, they really come out of a value system, and I think this is where, for me, this topic sort of begins to resonate and cause me to think and reflect. Because if cultures are symbols, language, norms, values, and rituals, then if we look at it a little deeper, we are now seeing this thing. And what we're actually seeing is that it mushrooms into wider areas of our lives, not just rituals, which are habits and values on languages, but it now is expressed through faith and religion, according to this graphic, our behavior, our actions, how we speak language, how we talk in arts, drama, and music, how we express ourselves, attitudes, how we do things. Attitude is always how you do something, not what you do, but what you do, not how you say it. No, sorry, not what you say, but how you say it. And that's where attitude comes in, tone and intonation, and when you look at the national landscape of the workforce, of the caliber of students in our country, you know, just recently there was a very shocking report by trying to remember the name of this organization. I think it's WHO, World Health Organization, right? And long and short, they were basically saying that a major concern has taken place where they looked at the CXC results for 2024, and regionally, only 5% of the students who set exams actually passed with a full certificate. Only 5%. That was a very alarming situation, and it caused the World Organization, right, to look at what are we doing as a nation. So of 200,000 students who set the exam per year, only 5% pass, which represents 10,000 students passing throughout the entire Caribbean. That means the failure rate, conversely, is 95%, which is 190,000 students failing to reach the threshold or the bar of a full certificate. Right? Now, if you look at this in the midterm, long term, for the next 5 years, that 200,000 will be 1 million students would have done the exam over the past 5 years, or the next 5 years, sorry. And only of that 1 million, only approximately 5% of that again will have passed, which is just 50,000. That may be startling, but I always look at the root and not the fruit of our problem. If students are not interested or not fully gaining the academic mentality or behavior or mindset to really tackle simple, basic arithmetic subjects, sciences, maths, I always tell my students, math is just to teach you how to think logically. That's all math does. Math teaches your mind. It programs your mind to think systematically, logically, and develop your executive thinking functions of the brain using numbers. English teaches you communication skills. How do you articulate yourself in a world where information and relationship is part of everyday life? You must master communication. You must master thinking critically, because critical thinking and creative thinking skills are important for survival. Sciences, of course, helps you understand how the world around you operates and functions. Business teaches you how to relate and trade and barter and basically create a livelihood for you and your family in time to come. All these different subjects, it teaches you basic survival skills. But if students can't even master this, and there's a failure rate of 95%, where's that attitude coming from? And I want to submit, is there a possibility it's coming from the culture? What are your thoughts, Miss?
Yes, I believe culture has a part to play, you know, in their view of education and their willingness to achieve. So if achievement is not really supported or encouraged in society, students will not be eager to learn, right? And for our youths, I believe our culture, the type of music they listen to, the type of shows they watch, right? And we can see this through TikTok, through Instagram, certain posts people will post, you know, everyone, the young people tends to follow or imitate what the larger society is doing into the school system, right? So the school is just a reflection of what is happening in the larger society. So if larger society is not focusing on academic success and empowerment and enlightenment, if they are not encouraging the young generation, right, it will show how in the school environment as well.
I agree there, because you know, most parents, they send their child to school and they have this expectation that the teachers and the school administration, they are going to protect their child from any and all. And that's where the unrealistic expectations come in. Protect their child from any and all dangers, direct or indirect, right? And the problem with culture is that it's something that's so subtle and so subliminal that sometimes the indirect influences can affect you in your subconscious more than the direct in your face, you know, cultural dangers or dangers in a school system that teachers just may not be able to protect your children from. That's just the reality. And that is where now the value systems, the belief system, the morals, the ethics that a parent teaches their children in the home. And this is the Parental Upgrade podcast. We focus on how can we get our parents on a conscious thinking playing field where you understand what makes your children tick, you understand the battles or struggles that they go through, you understand their identity and their personality separate and apart from the identity and personality of the other siblings. And more importantly, embrace the fact that you have been given a child so that you can help prepare them, mold them, and simply direct them into the direction of their purpose and destiny. Not your purpose and destiny, their purpose and destiny. But it takes a level of consciousness of understanding the environment in which we are raising our children, that that information is going to now guide and direct how are we going to raise our children in an environment or society that prepares them to deal with these cultural influences that is largely impacting our children's behavior. Let me jump ahead, Miss, and just show you a little bit more research I did. And this is, let me see, this is the lyrics of a song called Phenomenal. And we're talking culture here because so many times we miss the subtle influences that affect children's behavior. All right. Now, let me go back some years back, 2007. All right. This is close to 17 years ago. Right. 2007, Marshall came up with this song, Jumbie. All right. Now, they say culture is expressed. It's a belief system. It's an accepted norm and standard. Accepted as socially accepted behavior. All right. And then the music becomes the expression, the art forms, you know, the songs and the masqueraders, you know, and all the carnival costumes and the names, even the names that comes out every year for these carnival bands comes from inspiration from within. The question is, where's that inspiration coming from? So listen to this inspiration in form of a song. And he says, Jumbie, jumbie them, jumbie, jumbie them. Out, out, outer body, back to yourself now. Right? And that is the chorus. The verse says, we storming the tongue like jumbie. We jumping around like jumbie. Come out of your cage, jumbie. Take a jump and wave, jumbie. We jumping up all day. We jumping up all night. Jumbie jumping up all day. Jumbie jumping up all night. This is 2007, sorry. All right. And when soca started, I was watching did some backdrop on in the words of Nyla Blackman, the origins of soca. And so Nyla Blackman, who is the granddaughter of the great legendary the grandfather, they call him, but the grandfather of soca in this country, who started the soca movement, Ras Shorty I, known as Lord Shorty. I was listening to Marshall when he said that when he was born in the 1970s, Marshall said he grew up watching Lord Shorty as the symbol of carnival and sex. He used the word sex because why? Because Lord Shorty was a very, splashy, electrifying, charismatic, quote unquote sex symbol that represented the calypsonian industry. I mean, when I watch some videos of Lord Shorty, how he dressed sleeveless, the suits and the gears that he wore, it was like, what? These people was big in the game, Just looking at the fashion, I'm just saying that even Marshall was saying that sex appeal was part of the art form, And so when Marshall grows up now in an industry where this thing is part and parcel, it becomes normal, right? I just want to show 2 more slides on how the culture is expressed through music, but what sort of behavior and value system is it programming our young people who listen to these things. So Benjai came up with Phenomenal in 2015 now. It says, soca does give me powers. I think that song almost won a road march that year, almost, right? I didn't think he won a road march. But soca does give me powers. Turn me into masqueraders. Soca does give me my powers. Draw me straight in different colors. Masqueraders, we get powers. It's a wonderful feeling. On stage together, holding my banners. With different colors, we crossing the stage. We party in sun or rain. We don't care what the people say. Once the music hit my vein, so much power me can't explain. Until I cool again when the Father take me away. Very interesting words. All we my friends will say, I'm phenomenal. Very interesting words. Very, very interesting words. Now we come to 2025. This is the big carnival discussion or showdown that's taking place right now. All right. And the conversation is, who going to win Road March 2025? Is it Party or is it Greatest Bend Over? No, this is interesting. We're talking about carnival. Is it culture or cult? Because when we look at the academic results, 5% passing the benchmark, 95% failing. Plenty people could say from a sociological perspective, blame the pandemic, blame smartphones, blame internet, them children on the phone too much, the only screen and TV they're watching. But what are they watching on the screens, on the devices? Is the culture, is the cultural trends. So if we don't address culture and all that it displays and represents, we are then impacting and affecting a generation of people with this sort of behavior. Now, watch the words party. All work and no play, me say, no way. We don't want no part of that. I need a stress reliever, Marshall says. 2 drinks in my hand and a gal in the middle. That's the ground we need to find, the middle, for the sake of a peace of mind. So the middle of the road is where we'll find me and my friend and them. All right. Miss? I don't know if these words starting to send a clear message.
Yeah.
You could read
Basically,
quickly, Miss. Just do me a favor. Just the last one. The one that has become this one was launched since last year, December 2024, right? His name again? Young Brother. The Young Brother came out with this very infectious song, right? But watch the words. Listen to the words, Miss. You wanna do the honors?
this is Young Brother's song or Marshall's song?
The one on
It's the same thing.
bum. Yeah, right. Gosh, man. All right, guys. I'll fix that.
Okay,
No.
so let's go back. By the meantime, you're fixing and just making the adjustments. So the first song, Jumbie,
Yeah.
then by Marshall, and then we had Phenomenal by Benjai. Now the words of the songs alone, Jumbie. Now Jumbie is a folklore. Our local folklore, a Jumbie is a spirit, right? So the words alone, if it's a culture, it goes deeper. It's not just a song, because the song is talking about parts of the wider culture of folklore and Jumbie and spirits and so on. So that is where we could see the word cult coming to play or being identified, because it's something that it becomes a norm, but we don't talk about Jumbie, right? But here, we don't really talk about spirits or Jumbie, but here is a soca singer using it in a fun way or in a light way, because we know Jumbie could be very scary, right? Right? So here is where he is making the word Jumbie to be fun or to be acceptable, making it acceptable, right? In a fun, light way. However, in the Phenomenal song, it says, "Soca give me powers. It make me come out myself," or something. Not sure if those are the words, but if you're saying soca, which is the music here now, gives you powers and make you now leave your normal self and to transform into somebody else, which most masqueraders will tell you on Monday and Tuesday, they are not themselves. is like a part of them comes up and they are very free and more carefree in their behavior, right? Where in a normal regular day, that is not them. You won't see them dancing, skimpy looking and dressing skimpy and so on. No. Carnival to them, that's the time, the only time you will actually see them transform. And then back on Ash Wednesday, they transform back to their normal self. So this song, Soca Powers, Soca Gimme Powers, is actually you transforming yourself into something else for that particular
Correct.
moment. So that's where the cult comes in, because in a deeper, more, I mean, one of the slides that you show religious aspects of it. Now you are transforming yourself into something else that are not you. So then what are we really saying here? That is okay to pretend to be something else just for the moment of it, which in normal terms, people will say that's mad people behavior or insanity, right? Allowing your inner secret self to come out for those 2 days or that period.
That's the reality.
Mm-hmm.
You're hitting the reality there. And it's sad that so many you hear people, you see that the power of music, music has the power of entering into the subconscious mind with or without your permission.
Yeah.
With or without your permission. You sit down in a maxi, you hear everybody singing this thing, and you just have to hum it and sing it. You don't question spirituality of it.
True.
You just start to bob your head and start to whistle a tune, or start to sing it. But if you look at the power of words, for people who out there understand that we live in a world that is spiritual,
Correct.
right? And I don't know if you remember this, Miss. A while ago we did a science experiment where we were sharing with students the power of words, and we showed them the experiment by Dr. Emoto from Japan, who did, and you can find it on YouTube, parents or people listening, where he had 3 containers of water, and it says when he spoke positive words over one container, and it shaped and created nice, beautiful crystal formations. All right. Then he spoke negative, vile, evil, wicked words against another body of water. And then the shapes that started to create, of course, when he placed them in the freezer, started to create distorted, ugly looking like shapes. And then when he saw it, it's like, nah, this thing for real? The words that I'm speaking is affecting the literal construct,
Yeah.
of the water particles. So then he tried to put the rice. He labeled one container, I love you. One container, I hate you. And a third container this time with just nothing on it. No labels. And every morning he put this container on his window sill. And to the one that has I hate you, you will shout at it and say, I hate you, you ugly, and all these evil words. And then to the one that has nothing on it, pass it straight. And to the one that has I love you, you'll say all these loving, beautiful words about this container of rice. Within a week to 14 days, he reported, and countless other people have done this experiment. The rice that had I love you remained literally, it remained like almost never decayed, brand new. The one that he said nothing to, you saw natural decay. All right. But the one that he said the evil words against, I hate you and all these things, you saw rapid decay to the point of stench. It confirmed and validated the power of words. Now, when we sing these kind of words on a daily basis, sometimes 20, 30, 50 times a day, what do we think is happening to our subconscious mind? If that is the impact on water particles and matter, which is rice, which has no spirit, it has no soul, how much more do we think, listeners, that these sort of lyrics, Jumbie, Jumbie them, Jumbie them, right?
Outer body, back
Outer
to
body,
yourself.
right? Now, for some reason, I'm trying to get these lyrics for the greatest bend over. But I think just the title alone, I think for YouTube purposes, the title alone is very graphic. The video, for parents who are sensitive to their children watching PG-13 or PG-10 content, the graphics for this video is very, in the words of a friend of mine, outside. Right? The dancer in this video is outside. All right. Dancing that you will find or you would see in a strip club. And that is me being moderate, is what you are seeing in this video. Now, this is the two songs, Party and Greatest Bend Over. Greatest Bend Over. Now, when you have little girls listening to these sort of songs, what do we expect our children to begin
To emulate, to do.
emulate?
Yeah.
I want to speculate, right? Because Marshall has a huge following, it's a 50-50 chance. But honestly, you see that this song, Bend Over, because it came out long before Marshall one came out, is a high possibility this song will win. Now, here's my concern here, miss. Look at the song that may win. A song that is derogatory, but it's no longer derogatory if it's culture and it's socially acceptable.
Yeah.
You see the conflict now?
Mm-hmm. Well, you see, at Carnival time, that is the only time people are free
To express themselves.
to express themselves. So, as I said, their secret self will come out. What they will do behind closed doors, now they're doing it in public, in the open. Right? And it goes in all levels, from high society to the lowest in society. Right? That's the only time, Carnival is the only time you will actually see a woman who might be modestly dressed to go to work all through the year. That's the only time you will see her outside, come out herself, right? Wear skimpy outfits, wear nothing at all. Wear lingerie, the outfits you will have in the bedroom, they wear it outside and it's normal. But my question is, when they do these things and our young children are looking, what are
Yes.
we expecting our children to do? Now I'll give you a little example, right? So my son went to church today, and on his way back, he's like, "Mommy, waiting for transport today was really ridiculous. I saw some ladies have one of these kind of fish-looking things, stockings or whatever, And to me, the woman had on no underwear, but she wasn't looking good. Why they have themselves looking like that? And I'm like, well, it's Carnival, and that's the only time they might feel comfortable to come out the house looking like that. But my question is for a young 16-year-old boy, what his eyes is exposed to, things that
Correct.
they might be trying to as a parent, you're trying to protect your children from seeing. They're seeing it.
Correct.
And this is where our question comes. How much exposure? How much? How much? Because it is a very thin line where we say it's culture and then it's becoming very like light porn. The children are seen by these people dressing.
That is the problem. I mean, this becomes the main issue. As parents, how can we protect our children from, you can't even say soft porn anymore, right? It is what we call hypersexualized culture.
Correct.
And even Raj Shorty, he started in the 1970s, as a Calypsonian, Lord Shorty. He was in his heyday, the sex symbol of, and as we know with World War I and World War II, even the Gina Diner days, let me say that, brought with it a culture of, sexual promiscuity and, the whole thing that goes along with it. All right, the whole behaviors. And so in those days, Calypso reflected a lot of these activities, quote unquote, that took place. But even Raj Shorty, he recognized, even in his pinnacle of his success, he had young children. I remember Raj Shorty saying, he said he had to withdraw from the scene, the soca scene which he created. And the word soca, in all honesty, he said soca really was created as a means to bring the African and the Indian Trinidadian closer together. He called it really a Dougla music. All right. So it's where he would blend the African songs and the Indian songs together, and he blended it, and he did an album some years ago, and it failed because he got kicked back. The Indians were saying, he said it in this video, you can look it up on YouTube. He said he was desecrating the Hindu music, and the Africans were saying, you're spoiling me music, be calypso, and he said the following year when that album failed, he rebranded and he didn't use the Indian instruments. He just used the guitar, the triangle, and the trap set. We call the drum set today. And he created this, emulating or the same songs. He just transferred it to traditional instruments, right? And he mimicked the song, but he created it. And that year, he got this inspiration where he called it soca from calypso. He used the so from calypso, but the ka, he said ka is the first letter in the Sanskrit Hindu language or alphabet, Sanskrit, and K or ka, K-A-H, is the Indian influence, he would say, that he put on it. So he called it soca. All right. And so that is how soca created. He said it really was to bring two ethnic groups together. Yeah, that was the real origin, the inspiration behind it. But today, the evolution of it is what is worrying and concerning, because nothing we are seeing in soca today is about blending ethnic groups together or social, issues. We are just seeing blatant gyration,
Well, so
and
can I interject, right? Just so in my days, earlier times, listening to soca in my teens, I remember I remember a time listening to, I remember this song. It was one of Marshall's songs because I really loved Marshall. And I remember when I turned 18, I was like, I want to go Marshall. I must go a Marshall. I must go Marshall Monday. I need to experience it. And I remember going, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever, you know? But since back then, this is like 16 years ago, since back then to now, nothing really has changed, you know. It just gotten worse, I guess, in the outfits that people wear. But it was the same thing. It's nothing new. Nothing new. To soca back then. So it's like if you experience it once, you don't really need to experience it again because you already experienced it. Nothing really changed. You know, yeah, the music itself has evolutionized to even more vulgarness, more to be more vulgar, you know. So don't play the song, we could just say the words,
it's
you
just
know.
the words that we are
Yeah,
showing, you know.
right.
I mean,
So this song, Let Me Cater to You, I say, she said, take it easy, I will do the work. You don't have to wind up yourself. You don't have to rile up yourself, right?
now the thing with the art form called calypso soca, it's a lot of
Right.
tongue
So,
in cheek, and there's a
and she said, is the greatest bend over, roll your waist. Oh, Miss Lady, bubble and she bubble and she bubble and she whine. Give me the greatest bend over. You have the wickedest bend over. So, if we just stop there, I want to whine on your bumper. I know you like steam. I know you like vibes. I know you like speed. Now, the context of this and what he's actually saying is an action that is for big people in the bedroom. So why sing something like that? And little children will be hearing it. Because when they playing it in the maxi taxis or on radio and so on, even on television, the children sing it. So what are we really doing? What are we as adults really doing to our children? Because we are literally exposing them to things that they are not ready for. And then we wonder now, why they want to finish school? Or why they're not interested in learning? Or
yeah, that's correct.
because they're interested in all the other things that we as adults, and I'm saying we as the adults, has encouraged.
That's the reality.
Knowing that our young children are listening to this. Now, one day going to work in a taxi, I'm listening to the taxi radio station. And I believe this is the same song, right? Bend Over. And the commentator or the radio announcer was saying that somebody called in. It was call-in session, and the parents was like, oh, my son really love this song and thing. And then the conversation come about as this song is not really for little children, you know. You know, one of the radio announcers has to say, but this song is not really for that. And even the video,
Exactly.
you know, is
Even
not
the
really
video.
It's not really for little children, eh? So the radio announcer saying is not really for children, but children listening to it and they like the song as well. And curious children will go up and look for the words of the song because that's what they do. They mimic, they could say a whole song better than their tables
That's
reciting their
correct.
schoolwork, right? They
That's
can't
correct.
remember the schoolwork, but they
Nope.
remember the songs. And they will go and research up just to hear the lyrics of these songs. So parents, what are we doing? And society, greater society, because these singers as well, they have children as well, They have children as well. And believe you me, some of them don't even allow their children to participate in the things that they are doing.
That's
However,
correct.
some would. So the question is, what are we really doing as parents? How much we should expose our children to? Now, I will say it is a good thing for them to learn the aspects of Carnival, right? Like the traditional mask characters, just to know the history of it. I am not saying that you should allow them to participate. It's up to you. You as the adult will know how much, to expose your children to, make them get an experience of the carnival. But at least they should know the history.
That's correct. They should at least know the history. And I think, Miss, honestly, that leads me to my real concern. We call it culture, but how much of culture is really being taught as to give our children a true appreciation and not just an expression of culture? Are we really teaching them, okay, that this art form, this culture came out of oppression, it came out of injustice, it came out of hardship, and this is how our ancestors expressed. It was like a song of freedom. It was really, I mean, when you look at the steel pan is a marvelous instrument, the only one of its kind in the 21st century. Okay. Personally, as a person of faith, I have no problem with the steel pan. Personally. Right? Because of just the sheer marvelous uniqueness of it. However, what we have, I will say, degraded it to be is when you have a steel band playing, and in some bands, not all the bands, right? Some bands, they still have a level of professionalism and class. But is the half-naked woman you're seeing parading on the flag, in front of the band while they're playing, right? And the variety with bands, I mean, if you're in the Port of Spain area and you're around the what we call Carnival City, there are hundreds of children playing in the steel bands for this carnival. Hundreds. Which means, and these steel bands practice well after 10, 11, 12 in the night. I know real children didn't go to school next day, playing in pan sides, right? However, it's culture. Accepted as norm. But my concern is a couple of questions I want to close with. So we had some parents in advance send us some questions that we want to answer as we close. Right, Miss? We have to wrap this up. But there are some questions we want to at least be able to answer coming out of this podcast today. All right, so let's allow me to get these questions up. And these are some very, very valid questions, right? Because it had me pondering, and it really brings us, just as Miss Taylor said, you know, yeah, some of these content is not for children, you know, it's just not for children. Could you imagine a child being exposed to this level of hypersexuality at a young age? What sort of, how is that going to corrupt and shift a child's, mental template? And how they respect women and they respect boys. I mean, we are seeing it today in schools. Children, our females are aggressive towards boys. Boys don't approach girls anymore. It's girls approaching boys, right? I was calling on several occasions to go into schools to deal with sexual activity, in standard 4s and standard 5s. Even some standard 3s was involved. We know it's rampant in secondary school, secondary schools to an extent. It remains under the cover. Of course, reputations are at stake, rather. But if the culture allows it, what do we expect our children to do? And I say, I think this is my closing perspective on this. Parents, we have the final responsibility to ensure that we teach our children the right values and standards of what is appropriate, what's inappropriate, and ages and stages for everything under the sun. Ages and stages. The Bible puts it this way: do not awaken love before its time. I have dealt with the blowbacks of parents allowing their children at 12 and 13 and 15 to go to fetes, watercolor fete. But that's a big thing among schools, right? And children coming back to me, Mr. Clement, I went there with my boyfriend, and I either get date rape or I end up doing things I did not plan to do, And watch me, parents are clueless. They're trying to involve in those things. Clueless. But they come to the people who they trust, the teachers, they go at parents, the youth leaders. They will come and tell them, right? So these are the concerns I have. So here are some of the questions we have here. Question number, Miss, you want to read the first question? And what are your thoughts on this one? How can parents ensure that their children appreciate the artistic and cultural significance of Carnival without being overly influenced by its more commercial or adult aspects? How would you respond to that question, Miss?
As I mentioned before, doing some research, learning about the different aspects of Carnival, the origin of Carnival, the Camberley riots, the different traditional Carnival characters, teaching them the basics, the calypso, what is calypso, how calypso came about, how kaiso came about, the steel pan, the contribution of steel pan to Carnival, teaching them certain aspects of it, which would help them if someone asks from a foreign nation, tell me about Carnival. At least they can mention something about their national culture, right? Even though they may not participate in it, but at least if they just have the information, they could say, but without, you could show and you could teach them without allowing them to be exposed to the nakedness, as I will say, of the carnival aspect of it, the adult content of it.
Excellent response. I wouldn't add to that in interest of time, but I'll go to the next question. Question number 2.
Would you like me to read? What are
Yes.
some age-appropriate ways to introduce children to Carnival that focus on creativity, history, and cultural pride rather than just the spectacle of the event? Spectacle, sorry, of the event.
Right. So what are some appropriate ways to introduce children? One, I would say through the social studies curriculum. All right. We know we are people of different faiths, different persuasions. That's fine. But you should at least make children aware of the environment they're living in. All right. And this is important because, yes, culture does relate and expresses our cultural identity as a Caribbean people. All right. However, when we're talking about age-appropriate ways, one, we are talking about from having children to understand that these practices or these activities is something that adults participate in, and it's an expression of our cultural heritage. It's somewhat like a celebration. The same way we celebrate Father's Day and Mother's Day and your birthday. I mean, Carnival really is a celebration of culture. That's really what it is at the core. But we are dealing with not what we are doing, but it's how we are doing it. The same way how soca has become this celebration of, I would say, just nakedness and hypersexuality, but the very nature of it began as how do we bring two ethnic groups together in a melting pot country called Trinidad and Tobago with multiple races. We must bring our children to the origins of culture. All right. And also, when we talk about cultural pride, the second part of this question, right? How do we focus the attention on creativity, history, and cultural pride rather than just spectacle of the event? This now is where, as parents, we have to take our minds out of the box. There's so many parents would teach this way, which is the authoritarian method. You know, we don't celebrate Carnival, so forget that. You're not going to use that in the future. A parent told me that recently, right? They're not going to be, they don't need to know about Carnival for their job or their career. So that's not important to them, right? But if it is your son turns 18 and leaves the comfort of your care and is now exposed in a work culture or in a university, if they say, let's say they further their studies, and they go in a culture, let's say UE, for example, where culture is very liberal at the tertiary level, all right? How do you expect that child to adjust socially, to be able to focus on not just their academic pursuits and timetables and whatever. And there are all of these events that takes place for the holistic development of each tertiary student on the campus or in the workplace. You know, they will have these different events. You will have to collaborate and work in teams with people of these events. Even some companies that you work for, they are heavily culturally involved in as part of their social corporate responsibility, right? And they will have cultural projects. How can you have a grown adult not being aware of culture from something as simple as tourists asking you a question, you know, what is your national instrument? Or tell me a little bit about Blue Devils, for example. You must be able to explain these things. You must be able to not only explain it, but understand the history of it and how it impacts us as a people, particularly the cultural, but also the spiritual aspects of it. From Laja Bless to Mami Water, to Duens, to Papa Boa, to all of those things, to phantom spirits, to Mokojombies. You have to be able to explain these things, especially how it impacts spiritually on the psyche and the mentality of our people.
Correct.
So that is how I will answer that question. Parents, take the responsibility, at least make them aware of it, so that if they have to engage in it in the future, they are on a stronger footing to either say yay or nay, depending on whatever belief system you are training your children up in the home. Yes?
Correct.
All right, I'll read question number 3. How does the way we expose children to Carnival reflect whether we are raising them with an outcome-based or process-based mindset? And before you answer that question, Miss, this term outcome-based versus process-based is really a term that explains the 2 types of parenting that we are seeing today. And it's actually our overarching series for the next 2 months in the Parental Upgrade podcast, which is, are we training our children to achieve things in life, or are we training them to become someone in life? In other words, are we focusing them on things, just acquiring things, achieving goals, but who are they becoming in the process? Are they becoming responsible citizens, or are they becoming selfish, narcissistic overachievers? What are we creating as parents in our children? That is the difference between outcome-based and process-based, because there's a trend out of which says that the ends justifies the means, all right? Which means do whatever you have to do to get results. Whatever you have to do. That's the problem. And that happens with the outcome-based type parenting, where you just teach your children to do whatever it takes, or just focus on getting things, and our children become materialistic, versus teaching our children discipline and standards and values, which helps trains them to become a more responsible, productive, focused, considerate citizen in society. But how does those 2 different parenting perspectives impact on how do we expose our children to Carnival? That's really the question. How does those 2 parenting perspectives impact how a parent exposes their child to Carnival? I don't know if that makes sense, no, Miss.
Well, yes, that's a really good question, because some parents might say, well, I want my child not only to just know the social studies area, just the knowledge of it, I want them to experience it. However, it will have those who will just be like, okay, let's just know what it is, but we will not experience it. Now, those who allow their children to experience it, maybe by playing Kiddies Carnival, most of those children tend to later on, I'm just saying most of them, they may not be all, most of them, but they will later want to play mass when they are adults in the bigger bands, because why? Carnival became a part of them. Just for those parents who will allow their children to play pan, right, for, a pan side, later on that will encourage them to want to play more and more and be more involved in the carnival aspect, right? So as parents, I mean, the choice is yours. You have to know what you will want your children to be exposed to, how much, right? But at least we should let them be aware of it and not just grow up and then because they weren't aware, now when they reach an adult, they can't help themselves. They want more of it because it's something new to them. And some parents who are more authoritarian will be, no, I don't want you to know about carnival or anything, but time that child reach a certain age and they are on their own, they are more involved in carnival than anybody else, right? So we just have to use wisdom, right? Now, if you are a carnival lover, obviously you will want your child to love carnival as well. However, if you are not a carnival lover and prefer to be home, right? You wouldn't expose your children to carnival. Why? Because that's not your thing. But if carnival is your thing, then now you tend to see it trickling down into your children where you might allow them to play carnival, jump up in school, masquerade in school, you know? I played carnival about at least 3 times when I was in primary school. My mother wasn't a fan of carnival, but yes, she allowed me to experience, and then later on I got an opportunity to experience, but I chose not to. It wasn't my cup of tea, right? But she allowed me to experience it and allow me to make that decision whether or not I want to be in the carnival scene, you know. But I mean, it's everyone's preference, you know, your personal belief. But my thing is don't expose too much, you know. Don't expose the other side of it. Carnival, yes, is a time of celebration. We could celebrate in clean ways, right? But try not to expose them to the other side, the adult side of it.
That's correct. I want to second that thought. We really have to choose and be responsible as to how much do we expose them to at what age. Now you have Kiddies Carnival, you know, you have Junior Panorama, you have all those things. And the reason why the authorities would have these levels of age appropriate competitions is because they understand, in all fairness, the full-blown masquerading and, you know, steel band atmosphere is something that a child 9, 10, 13 should not be exposed to simply because of what happened. I mean, I was in Panyards from the age of what? 14, 15, 16, right? Playing for big pan sites out here, right? Invaders Phase 2, good. But what you were exposed to was drinking, smoking. These things happen on the side. No, you have the elders in these pan sites, they will not be sharing, you know, drugs per se, you know, but you are seeing it. They never say, hey, small man, take a smoke or take a drink. No, they wouldn't do that. All right. But being exposed in the environment, seeing the elders in the environment doing those things, remember, trend learn by imitation. You will want to gravitate and drink a beer too.
Correct. All right.
And worse yet, when nobody's looking, that is when you're tempted more to do it.
Correct.
Because why? Children, especially in their teenage years, they learn by experimentation and imitation. And the experimentation phase have destroyed countless young people. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Yes.
All right. Question number 4 as we wrap up. With the evolution of Carnival and its increasing global visibility, should parents be more intentional about teaching the roots and values behind the celebration rather than just letting children absorb what they see? This is a very good question. This is a profound question because Carnival is now a global. It's called the greatest show on earth according to certain promoters.
Well,
Right?
yes, Carnival has been branded and retransformed or being exported to different parts of the world, like Europe and America and different parts, our culture, right? Carnival and our type of carnival. Now you have the Brazilian carnival, and then you have
Correct.
the Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean carnival, right? So our carnival has been branded now and been exported to other areas in the world where our Caribbean diaspora people are, right? Because why? It's a part of who we are. But the question is, it's a really good question. Should we teach them? Yes, we should teach them the roots and the history of Carnival because that is who we are. It is part of us through our generations. People might say, no, it's not part of us. Yes, it is a part of us. We like music, whether it's in our normal religious aspects of it. Sometimes we bring across that type of creativity into our religious festivals, whether it's Hindu, Muslim, or Christianity, right? Because we do have soca gospel, we do have chutney soca,
Correct.
music,
Chutney
from
soca.
the
Gospel soca.
Hindu parts of it. So yes, it has implemented into other religious parts of our identity. But the borderline is, or the thin line is, should we absorb? Absorb meaning, should we just allow the children just to see all the good and the bad of it? Because as Mr. Clement just said, being exposed to not only playing the pan, but you're seeing the other aspects, the drinking, the smoking, and Carnival in Trinidad is a lot of drinking. That is our culture as well. Alcohol. We have a lot of big alcohol punching, right? We, as a culture, as a nation, we like to lime and drink. So that is also embedded into the carnival that we experience now. So how much should we expose our children to? That's the question.
Yep. But the focus is how much okay. That is very accurate contribution as it relates to understanding the reality of the culture. You live in a country, as they say, if you're in Rome, do as the Romans, right? Now, these philosophies are questionable because in certain faiths, they teach you are salt and light, right? Salt changes the taste, the flavor, the tempo, the everything of whatever salt interacts with, right? When light shows up, darkness has to disappear. These are concepts. These are belief systems, all right? But in a real social context, we have to be able to teach our children when to accept something as a cultural norm and the spiritual implications or impacts of those practices if you choose to take it further. These are to me, this is where I find culture could be disingenuous to our young people. The artists don't tell our young people or the listenership or the followers what they do behind the scenes to get the inspiration that they get for the songs. Or the masqueraders and the bands, they don't tell people, the vision they get in the night or what they did to get that inspiration for the name of this costume. Because for the Mardi Gras, the reign of the Merry Monarch, those pronouncements, I remember Delamo, who is also a prominent Calypsonian, some years ago, he would have, just like Rashotiai, gave his life to Christ, decided to change his life. And it was only then when the scales was removed from his eyes, he got a clear vision and understanding of all these things he was a part of, all these spirits attached to these cultural norms and acceptable behaviors, and how it was impacting his life. And it's only when his eyes was open, he came out on television. As a matter of fact, he was going around to many different organizations and groups and churches talking about the reality of what happened behind the scenes in this festive season called Carnival. When you see somebody blow up overnight, you think that's normal? Artists blowing up overnight, fashion wear blowing up overnight. These things have their bearings. It have their origins. And we as a people, we have to just alert our children to these realities, right? That is just the facts, all right? I think we have 1 or 2 questions remaining. One second. All right, so there's about 2 questions left, Miss. Can too much, 1 second. This is the next question here. Can too much exposure to the entertainment-driven aspects of Carnival shape a child's mindset to prioritize instant gratification over discipline and long-term growth? If so, how can parents counteract this? Ms. Taylor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. But feel free to respond.
Right, can too much exposure, right, can too much exposure, right, so I would say yes, the answer is yes, right, because the culture promotes the bling, the ka-ching, and the gals, right, the
Drinking the alcohol.
yeah, it promotes that. Almost all the videos, it shows you sensuality and vanity.
Vulgarity.
And vulgarity. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. And if that becomes the predominant images imprinting on the minds of the viewership, then that becomes the message you're selling. That is the message you're selling. So as a result, yes, it does shape a child's mindset to prioritize instant gratification. And that's why when it comes to disciplining students, You tell them come off the phone, or you tell them come off the TV, go and study your work. You find the temper tantrums, the rudeness, the attitude, because in their mind, another episode I'll talk about that. But the thought is here, we give them instant gratification and then we try to teach them discipline in one hand, where we buy them the device, we give them the privileges to do what you want. And then it's like the horse them both are the stable. And now you're trying to get the horse back into the stable by teaching them disciplines. No, the discipline's supposed to go first. And in preparation for the privileges and the rewards that the parents hopes to give them in time to come. But what we have going on now today is the reverse of that, right? Where we promote the instant gratifications. And what did the child do? What process of discipline and hard work and commitment did that child engage in as to reward them that privilege? So these are some concerns that we could discuss in further episodes. But yes, how can parents counteract this? We counteract it by really reevaluating first our parenting style. Are we laissez-faire or neglectful parents? Are we indulgent parents, giving children everything that they want, smothering them, trying to win their approvals? So we do anything to win their love and attention? Or are we authoritative, which is the healthy balance between discipline and reward and responsibility? Or is it authoritative, my way or the highway? That dogmatic kind of approach. We need to evaluate some of these things. And if we could start there, then we will begin to train children with the right perspective in mind, which is, are we building children to be responsible citizens, to be sensate, to be committed, to be productive, to be all these good qualities that we're looking for in the future leaders of our nation or young people, all right? But it all begins with starting with reevaluating our parenting style, all right? I'm going to close with this last question that for tonight, we have had a marathon tonight, but I think it was necessary for us to be able to, discuss this topic in its totality. Carnival is once a year, right? So our goal is, okay, last question, number 6. And that question is, should Carnival culture have moral bearings, seeing its power to shape a child's mind, behavior, and values? I'll leave you to answer that last question. Should Carnival culture have moral bearings, seeing its power to influence and shape the minds of children's behaviors and values? You can unmute your mic.
Not sure how to answer that one though, but should it have moral bearings? Yes, it should have some level of, and I think it do to a point where they try to have separation of the children's children events to the adult events, but yet still the same music that the adults are listening to is more than likely being played at the children's events. So it should have a balance where more cleaner aspects of it should be portrayed to them, or cleaner songs, you know, to be played to them compared to the big. It should have a separation between what is the children experiencing compared to what the adults is experiencing. It shouldn't be one thing throughout for both age groups.
That's correct. I completely agree that I mean the government can only do so much. This is the reality, but I believe parents have the final responsibility to really safeguard their children from the level of inappropriate or overexposure to certain contents in carnival activities and programs that is aired online, aired in school, promoted in widespread culture. I know you can't protect your children from everything. That's just a reality. But we should, in our home, all charity begins at home. If we train our children the right moral standards, ethics, what's right, what is wrong, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, what's good touch, what's bad touch, what is decent exposure, what's indecent exposure, what is acceptable behavior, what's unacceptable behavior, especially in dealing with the opposite sex. I believe as parents, we are dropping the ball big time there. Not teaching girls or little girls how they interact with boys and not teaching our boys how they interact with girls. It's a already hypersexualized culture, and children will only want to experiment what they see and they hear in our mainstream culture. So parents, we close today. On this note, my final words is parents, you have the final say and responsibility as it relates to molding your child. I close by telling parents, just like a canvas, a painting canvas that begins with a blank white sheet. We did this activity in our second episode where we asked parents, get a white sheet of paper and get a marker or a pen and begin to write all the amazing things and future and personality traits and character traits and values and virtues you want to mold your child into. And if you could start writing that on that piece of paper, fill up that paper as much as possible. That if you could start to apply and practice some of those things and work intentionally, just like just like what we call the artist. The artist is intentionally painting on that canvas with specific colors in mind, specific picture in mind, a specific technique in mind, because they want a specific outcome. It's called outcome-based conscious parenting. We want our children to be responsible citizens. We want them to be responsible husbands and wives to someone else's child in the future. We have to model that. We have to train them to become that. We cannot raise children to become tyrants in society. That is it's a disservice. It is hands down unfair that one parent raises their child to be decent and another child is in the same space that they have to share in a classroom or in the workplace or in wider society, have to now engage with a child that can completely wreck that child's future. That is unfair. That's irresponsible parenting. So parents, I encourage you, in this carnival season, we also have a lot of predators out there. That's another reason why we have to be careful what we expose our children to and what we allow them to wear and dress, because there are predators out there, parents, all right, that we have to protect our children from. So those are my final words. Miss, your final words.
Yeah, just saying, be careful, be aware, be mindful of your children at this time. Know who you are leaving them with if you are partaking in carnival, any carnival activities. Be responsible, right? And let's take care of our young ones, our gifts from God. Let's not waste these opportunities of teaching and building our children or empowering our children to be the best that they can be. But we have to be our children's first heroes and role models. Have a good night.
Have a blessed night. Thank you again for tuning in. We hope you look at the replay of this podcast and feel free to share it with a friend. Yeah, so thank you for joining us and inspire our young people, our parents, upgrade them, and in a very dedicated and deliberate environment where you can be inspired and you can be encouraged to address issues in a safe, solutions-based environment, and you can get answers to some of the problems that you are going through. We are looking forward to have a few guest speakers. The next time we come online, that's the third Sunday in March. We look forward to having you again. Be safe, and thank you for viewing. Have a blessed night.